We have the Chargers on Monday Night Football tonight, and we are looking for Justin Herbert to let it rip in order for Jim Harbaugh to get some revenge on Big Brother John.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 9 years, but this is our 7th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen, and to make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Big game, big night. Prime time. If the Chargers want to come away with the win, they need to attack the league's worst pass defense. It's all about Justin Herbert airing it out, letting it rip. And then on defense, of course, you always have to control and contain Lamar Jackson. He's the most gifted running quarterback in the league, but also don't forget about the arm as well. He is extremely dangerous. 25 passing touchdowns already this season. And of course, King Henry has to be dealt with. He is a force, one of the most dominant running backs in the league. And then we finish things up with our game and bold predictions.
And if you want to place any bets on this one, you know you have to go with FanDuel, and you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. David, it's not often that we come together to do these keys, and the biggest key for the game is so obvious, right? Because when you look at this Ravens defense, it's pretty obvious how to beat them, and it's very obvious what the Achilles heel is for this team, and that is their pass defense. And I think when you're talking about how teams match up against each other, I think that the Ravens offense brings some unique challenges for the Chargers defense, but I do think the Chargers offense brings some unique challenges for this Ravens defense as well. That hasn't been the notorious Ravens defense we've seen in the past. This is a flawed defense that can get got. And I think when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert, who's playing at the level that he is, obviously every game you want to go into saying, hey, let him rip it and just let him go air it out. But in this game in particular, especially with the Ravens' really, really stingy run defense, it's up to the Chargers to get Justin Herbert in a position to succeed. And if he does, he's going to rip up this Ravens defense.
Yeah, this defense for the Baltimore Ravens is very much Jekyll and Hyde when it comes to defending the run and defending the pass. They are second in the league against the run. They are dead last against the pass, giving up 284.5 passing yards per game. Joe Burrow absolutely destroyed the Ravens in 2 games, put up 820 passing yards and 9 touchdowns. Oof. Jameis Winston threw for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dak Prescott, 379 yards and 2 touchdowns. Justin Herbert is better than all of those quarterbacks. So he has the opportunity to go in there and absolutely light it up, air it out. They should be looking to attack in the passing game all night long.
Yeah, and I think that, if Vlad McConkey can play, obviously you have a pretty full complement of pass catchers outside of Hayden Hurst, who has been a non-factor completely in 2024 anyways. But yeah, I mean, on average, the Ravens allow quarterbacks to throw for 304 yards and 2 touchdowns and an average passer rating of 98.2. And you named all the great quarterbacks they went up against. They've gone up against some duds as well and still given up huge chunks. Herbert, on the other hand, has thrown for 279 plus in 4 out of his last 5 games. And I also think that Justin Herbert can't be afraid to use his legs as well. They've also allowed quarterbacks to run for 20 plus in 4 of their last 6 games. I just hope that the fumble doesn't deter him from scrambling and doing what he needs to do. I thought Jim Harbaugh handled it perfectly when asked about it and just said, hey, you're going to let your superstar go out there and do what's best and kind of just, I'm going to ride and die with him. And if he fumbles, he fumbles. I hope he knows that and continues to use his legs, because I think that has been one of the major differences in this Chargers offense over their 4-game winning streak.
I think that's a really great call out with Justin using his legs, because he is dynamic as a runner and he can rip off big chunks. And we've seen it ever since that ankle has gotten feeling better. We saw it with him being able to extend plays, be able to extend drives, running with the ball, getting first downs, and not even just getting first downs, getting big runs, 20, 30, 40-yard runs from your quarterback. That's game-breaking stuff. That's back-breaking for a defense. We see it all the time, unfortunately, with Patrick Mahomes being in our division, how he just subtly is able to extend drives, escape defenders, and be able to move the drives along. Justin Herbert has that ability as well, and I think he's probably more dynamic as a runner, in my opinion. But yeah, Justin, let's just slide next time. Let's not try to initiate contact all the time. I love it when I see it, but you're just way too valuable to this team and their success to go out there and get hurt doing something like that, or fumbling the ball and losing that momentum. But I think that's a great call out with Justin using his legs.
You got to pick your spots, right? And I think the other thing too is just do it early and make that a threat, because it is a good run defense you're going up against. And I think that's also just part of getting off to a fast start. And I think when you're going up against a team like the Ravens, I know the Chargers did a huge lead last week, but guess what? The 20, plus point lead was the only reason they won the game to begin with. It's because they were able to kind of weather that storm. But the Ravens are averaging 30.7 rushing attempts per game. If you can get them out of that, that's not what their game plan wants, right? Yeah. If you look at Derrick Henry's, attempts through the games, they will get away from him. He's averaging 6 yards per carry. You'd think he was running the ball 28 times a game. That's not been the case. And also, the Chargers aren't a good team at playing it behind either, because it's two things. It takes away the advantages of the play action, and they're one of the best play action teams in the league. And it also puts your offensive line in a really, really bad spot, because everyone knows you're going to be throwing the football.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think one of the things that you have to pay attention to with the Ravens in particular is they have a fantastic pass rush. I mean, they have a couple of guys that have 7 sacks apiece. Kyle Van Noy has 7, and then Owe has 7, and Matabike has 5 in the middle. So, those are 3 guys that can really get after the quarterback. One of the ways that the Chargers can slow down that pass rush is by utilizing the screen game. Get the ball in the hands of J.K. Dobbins and Darius Davis. I think Darius Davis absolutely needs to touch the ball. We've seen it already with how effective he's been in those situations when he gets those wide receiver screens. He has such just speed and glide that he's able to get out there and get 10, 15 yards before even getting touched. And he's just so comfortable running in between, different defenders and being able to really get extra yards. He's been great as a punt returner, kick returner, making an impact on that part of the game. I think the screen game needs to be utilized to at least slow down that pass rush and to be able to move the ball down the field.
I think the other part of that too, especially if you get Darius Davis involved in that, is once you run a screen with him, it opens up a play we've already seen Quentin Johnston score on this year, which is basically the pump fake for the screen. Yeah. And then you have somebody block and release up the field, and it turns into a chunk play. So I think that works in more ways than one. The Will Dissly screen has been maybe their most effective one. We haven't really seen them work it out with the running backs. I can't remember a very successful running back screen that they've run this year, right? It has to get better. But I think when you're going back to the protection in that pass rush, I trust the tackles, right? I trust Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt to hold their own at the very least against Odafe Owe and our old friend Kyle Van Noy, who could still be on the Chargers if not were Tom Telesco and a bad move there where he said, hey, they didn't want me, which is crazy to see what he's been able to do. Super excited for him. But the guy who scares me the most is Nnamdi Matabike, right? That is the guy against this Chargers defense that scares me the most. He doesn't have the most sacks, but he scares me the most because he's a guy on the inside where even if you see 5 sacks this year and it doesn't seem all that intimidating, go look at what he's done. Go look at the contract he just signed. Yeah, he got that for a reason. And he can take over this game if you let him. It's the same thing as we've seen other guys do against this Chargers defense, and that is easily the weakest part. So if you can handle him inside, if you can take care of that and not let him take over this game, Justin Herbert is going to put up, 30-plus points in this game. I think the other thing as far as the protection goes is just great communication. This is a team that's going to send a lot of different guys. 13 different players have a sack for the Ravens this season.
And they're familiar with your defense and your offense with Greg Roman, obviously. A lot of connections here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of guys I'm sure played during the Greg Roman era, and then you have, other guys that played in the Mike McDonald defense. That is what Jesse Minter's defense was born under. So I think all that's big. I think the other thing, hey, what can you get from your former Ravens, right? What can you get from J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards? Can you get enough to make that play action more, to sell it a little bit more, to make it a little bit more effective, to suck up those linebackers and open up plays over the middle of the field, down the field? So it's going to be really interesting. The Chargers, should be able to move the football. Me and you both agree on that. They should be able to put up some points in this game. But how many points will they allow? Because they're going up against a 2-time MVP and an offense that's been one of the best in the entire football league this season. So we're going to talk about how they can contain not just Lamar Jackson, but also King Henry and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I do want to tell you guys history, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Or even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning of history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and more. And all of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, and discussions, or just sit back and enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. I also need to tell you guys about PrizePicks because it's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, and it's also the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because unlike on other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you versus the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks, and PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. You can still get in on tonight's game because the Chargers are playing tonight, and all you have to do is this simple. Justin Herbert throwing for more than or less than 257.5 passing yards, and combine that with Ladd McConkey going for more than or less than 67.5 receiving yards. You hit those, you win. You could even throw in Justin Herbert going for more or less than 1.5 passing touchdowns, which I absolutely love. All you have to do is download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get that $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Dave, let's continue getting into our keys and look at the defensive side for the Chargers. Easily the biggest test they're going to face is for their defense. Not as much for their offense, but their offense still has to come through and execute and can't go on the scoring droughts we've seen.
Yeah.
But they're playing an offense unlike they've seen this season. Straight up. And they're coming off of a game where they gave up the most points they have all season. If the Chargers don't have a good game plan for this game, if they can't kind of hit on some of the things we're going to talk about here, they could allow 35 in this game. That's just how good the offense is that they're going up against. But their offense has been really great because certain players and really kind of a select few players have been great. But it starts with the Achilles heel for the Chargers. You look at your own weaknesses and you're going up against a team that can exploit them unlike any other. And that is being able to contain the quarterback. The Chargers haven't been able to do great at that, right? If you look at it, Chargers have allowed 39 rush yards per game on average to quarterbacks over their last 6 games. They've allowed 27 or more in 5 of 6 games. That's not good when you have Lamar Jackson rolling into town on Monday Night Football. Sacks aren't as important to me, David, in this game as containment is. I don't care if there's 2 sacks. If they contain Lamar Jackson all night, they're going to give themselves a great chance to win.
Yeah, the edge rushers have to be extremely disciplined in this game. They have to make sure that they do not allow Lamar Jackson to win the edge. If he wins the edge, then he can take off. He can take it to the house from anywhere on the football field. He has that type of speed, and obviously we know how dynamic he is in the open field, just making slight little cuts and jukes and being able to just really just get out of the way and move.
He's slippery.
Forward.
It's hard to get a big hit on him. You don't see him take a lot of big shots.
He's very, very good at that. So the edge rushers need to make sure that they are staying disciplined in that aspect. But I think what I've noticed, at least this year in particular, is Lamar Jackson is looking to throw first. He is not looking to run. He's running a little bit less this year in comparison to previous years. His eyes are down the field. He's scrambling a lot less. Baltimore's offense is nearly 50-50 with a slight edge to rushing attempts. His ability to move in the pocket, though, is still elite. So that's another reason why the edge rushers need to be very disciplined, because he can just slide to the left or right, move up, move back, and buy a little bit of time and throw it over a linebacker's head to make a big play. So edge rushers need to make sure that they stay as disciplined as possible against Lamar Jackson.
Well, the thing is even if he's like scrambling less and rushing less, I mean, he still has 40 plus rushing yards and
Oh, he's still amazing.
every
Yeah, don't get me
game
wrong.
but 2 games this year, right? He's only had less than 30 rushing yards in 1 game so far this year. But to your point, though, what really has made him more dangerous is commitment to keeping his eyes downfield and getting defenders to commit themselves to him. And then he just pops a little pass. It's what he tried to do on the 2-point conversion last year that failed, right? Get the whole defense to come after you. You just lob one up and somebody's there because everyone's trying to make sure that you don't beat them with your legs and then you beat them with your arm. And that has been the story for him a lot this season.
Yeah.
But it's not as simple, right? You look at his game logs, I think he has 1 game or 2 games under 200 passing yards this year. Like he's lit it up all season long. He's one of the top throwers this year. But if you can take that other dimension away, that's just one less thing for them. It's not that he has to use his legs to beat you, but if he's using his legs and his arm, you're in way more trouble. But I still think, David, even with that being so important and maybe the utmost importance, Derrick Henry is having a career revival right now. Like things, he looked like he was on his last, legs in Tennessee. Now he's come to Baltimore. He's been one of the best running backs in the NFL so far this season.
Yeah.
And you just can't let him get going. And the reason I say that is because the Chargers have had success against him in the past, right? He's played the Chargers 4 times. He's averaged 76.8 yards per game, 3.8 yards per carry. You're not going to find many teams that have been able to do that. The biggest reason they've been able to do it is because they take away the runway. You have to muck things up. You can't make it very clear runways for him to get up to full speed. If he gets to full speed, he can still outrun cornerbacks who weigh 185 pounds. There's no science to it. It doesn't. He's an anomaly. He's a total freak of nature.
Well, he's
still that guy. He's a train. And if you let him get to that full acceleration, if he gets to that top speed, good luck. Yeah. Right. And I mean, tackling, all of those things are going to be as important as ever. Staying, disciplined, being able to tackle like with Lamar Jackson. Yes, you want to get pressure. Staying in your rushing lanes is more important. If you get to Derrick Henry, slow him down, rally to the football, and you might be able to contain him.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've enjoyed, at least so far this year, for the Chargers is the gang tackling, the swarm tackling. It's always not. It's not just 1 or 2, but it's the whole team eventually getting over to get the ball carrier down. That's the type of effort it's going to take against Derrick Henry, who has 1,185 rushing yards and 13 rushing touchdowns this year. He's absolutely killing it, which is a very, very scary sight. But yeah, you need to hit him before he gets going. You got to get him stopped before he gets up to full speed, because he's definitely not a guy that has that initial burst and speed right off the rip. He has to get those legs churning, get moving. If he gets a runway, like you said, man, he can absolutely take off. So if you're able to limit him, then good things happen. I mean, when you are able to hold the Ravens under 100 yards rushing, they lose every single time. So it's very, very important to stop that run. You know that you're going to get a pretty nice dose of it. And I think for me, another thing that I had here was you got to get ready to defend the tight ends in this particular game. The tight ends, and they have 2 very dangerous ones with Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. Lamar Jackson loves them. 78 targets, 725 yards, 8 touchdowns to just tight ends. Yeah. And which also brings me to the fact that Lamar Jackson absolutely loves throwing the ball over the middle of the field. Intermediate passes, right in the middle, 32 of 40, 520 yards, 6 touchdowns, 80% completion percentage. He loves to throw the ball. 11 of his 25 touchdowns this season are over the middle of the field, Daniel. So if you can try to muddy that up, try to change that sight picture, try to take away the middle part of the field, you're going to make things a lot more difficult for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, Isaiah Likely early in the year was really, really important as, Mark Andrews got going and recovered. And to me, I mean, Isaiah Likely hasn't been as good lately, obviously, and that's been because Mark Andrews is kind of back now. I mean, he has 5 touchdowns in his last 6 games. And to me, I think when you look at this offense, if you're talking about the running game, obviously it's Lamar, it's Derrick Henry. If you're talking about the passing game, it's Zay Flowers and it's Mark Andrews. And I think that the important part of this game is just what is your game plan for those guys, because both of those guys are really streaky as well. Like Zay Flowers either has a totally pedestrian game or he goes absolutely bananas, and there's no in between. Right? 6 games under 40 yards this year. So more than half the games this year, he's been held to less than 40 receiving yards. 5 other games, he's gone 90 plus, and 4 of those were 100 plus. So it's like, hey, if you can slow him down, if you can make him not, get going and have that big game, he's probably going to have a pretty pedestrian game. If you can hold, and then obviously once you get to the red zone, it shifts, right? The focus shifts to the tight ends, to Mark Andrews. And like we talked about on the crossover show, a couple of red zone stops in this game might be what it takes to win, and might be what wins you this game, right? Forcing a turnover might be what wins you this game. Lamar Jackson, great runner, has 6 fumbles in 11 games. Go for the football. Derrick Henry had a big fumble over the last couple of weeks too. Go for the football. If you can do that, those are the type of things that swing a game between two really good teams at this point in the NFL season. Like I told you, I think the Chargers are playing the best team that they played this year, even if their record might not say that. And it is going to be stopping Mark Andrews, stopping them in the middle of the field. And the guy they have to do it is Deion Henley. And one of our listeners thinks in his bold prediction that Deion Henley is in for a big one. So we're getting into all that and the game predictions as well in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel because you can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, including tonight on Monday Night Football. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The game tonight, the line has shrunk a little bit. There was 3 at the beginning of the week. The Chargers are now only 2.5-point underdogs at home on Monday Night Football. If you like the Chargers in this game, you can get them at the money line, plus 124, which is awesome. Or you can go with anytime touchdown scores, which I like. I like Quentin Johnston in this game, who has scored in 3 straight, and you can still get him at plus 240 in this game. Me and you talked about it. Marlon Humphrey probably getting a lot of Lab McConkey in this game. Maybe Quentin Johnston can get him for his 4th straight game. He's been their most effective, consistent red zone weapon. All you have to do if you want to get on that action, visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. David, it's time to get into our bold and our game predictions, but thank you to the everydayers out there, as always, for making us your first listen, especially on this great Monday Night Football action, the Harbaugh Bowl tonight. And if you guys need a second listen, make sure to check out the new slate at Locked On NFL, where they now have 2 shows a day, in the morning with Tyler the Madman Rowland, and later on with my boy Tony Wiggins in the barbershop, as they bring on the people who cover their teams every single day. And you can find that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast from. David, bold prediction time, and this one comes from 619 Shaggy, who says this: the Ranger riding off into the sunset, 15 total tackles, TFL, 2 pass breakups, and a sack. The Ranger, of course, is Deion Henley. He's been such a well-rounded player, David. Like, this sounds like a, like if Derwin James was a linebacker, he'd have a stat line like this in his heyday when he was putting up those ridiculous box scores. It feels like Deion Henley could have a game like this, and I think it's super important for him to have a big game because we know that Denzel Perryman will not be in it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it sucks not having Denzel for this type of game, going up against a bigger, more physical running back, having a linebacker with his pedigree of really, bringing the boom and being able to provide those big hits. Now that onus goes to Deion Henley, goes to Troy Dye, goes to Nick Neiman, right? Having to impose their will. And the thing that honestly comes to my mind when I see this stat line, it's like, that seems very believable. It seems like that's a stat line that Deion Henley has come close to putting up a couple of times already this season. We know he's a tackling machine. We know he's going to be around the football. If he's able to get that sack, that would be huge. Obviously, the tackles for loss, fantastic. That would be a great stat line for Deion in this one.
And that's the thing about this game specifically. You're not going up against a team that does any one particular thing great on offense. They do everything very, very well.
Yeah.
You need a dude who can do it all, and that's all Deion Henley has done all season. So wouldn't surprise me to see. I mean, it would be very surprising to see anyone put up this stat line, but if somebody could do it on this Chargers roster, it'd be Deion Henley. And I like throwing the sack in as part of that because he's really come alive as far as the pass rush department the last couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, he hurdles a dude and sacks Will Levis. Last week, he gets a huge hit on Joe Burrow that potentially saves the game for the Chargers. So let's get to Where You At Cap, who says this about his bold prediction this week. He says, Justin Herbert has more combined pass and rush yards than Lamar Jackson, and we hold Derrick Henry to less than 100 yards. David, that's a recipe for success in my book. It's one of those bold predictions where I'd say, hey, if this happens, I'd almost guarantee the Chargers are pulling out the W.
Absolutely. I love it. I can absolutely see Justin Herbert outgaining Lamar Jackson. I think that's a possibility going up against that secondary. And then as far as Derrick Henry, as great as he has been, and all the yards that I told you about that he has accrued, he has been held under 100 6 times this season. So it is very possible to limit him. But we told you how important it is to get him off the tracks before he gets revved up and going. If you're wanting to do that, that's going to be imperative in that mission.
And I think, obviously, J.K. Dobbins and Derrick Henry are very, very different running backs. But I think the one thing that's true about both of those guys is you can keep them to 2 yards per carry for the entire game, and they could break a 50-plus yarder at any time. Yeah. And that's the hard thing, is it can always look like you're having a great game against Derrick Henry until you're not. And that's kind of been his story a lot of times. And now, obviously, he has a guy who's pulling the football out of his stomach sometimes to take it himself, who's the most dangerous runner potentially that we've ever seen with the football at the quarterback position. So there's nothing easy about this one. I think that if they can do that and Justin Herbert can do that, I like that he said, hey, total yards, right? Show them who the true dual threat quarterback is, Justin Herbert. But we do have a Thier calling in, and he thinks a former Raven is in for a big game.
Dan, David, this is Ethia Bold Prediction Monday. J.K. Dobbins, 127 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. The Chargers is going to beat their ass 34-17 and make a statement. Let's go, baby.
I think this is really bold because the Ravens are so good at stopping the run. I mean, that's just it's weird to see a defense give up as many points as they have and to be so good at anything. But the Ravens are a really, really tough run defense. The Chargers have 2 former Ravens, right? And I think, hey, if those guys can do enough, like I talked about in the first segment, they can just get a little bit done. Just get that 3 yards per carry. Limit the negative and 0-yard gains. That's enough in a game like this. You don't need them to run for 127. If J.K. Dobbins could go up against this rush defense and put up 127, like the 3 touchdowns doesn't seem that crazy because I think the Chargers are going to get down there.
Yeah.
The 127 yards, though, seems a little far-fetched just because of how good this Ravens front has been.
Well, it's far-fetched because only 3 teams have gone over 100 yards rushing against the Ravens this year.
That's
not
silly.
Players. I'm talking about whole teams.
Yeah.
No one player has rushed for more than 63 yards against the Ravens, and that was in the most recent contest with the Pittsburgh Steelers where Najee Harris went 18 for 63. So
Jesus.
As much as I would love to believe this one, the only chance that this has of actually coming true is if Roquan Smith does not suit up and play tonight as we are, talking about this game. That's the only way. Other than that, I think there's no way that's happening.
Yeah, well, it feels like as part of this, you'd have to break a big one, right? Like it feels like 100%. You would have to have like a 60-plus yarder, and then, it becomes a lot more believable, and we know he can do it.
Yeah.
That is the big thing, though, David, because it has been a great run defense, but there's 2 huge question marks for that Ravens defense as far as their run defense goes. One big defensive tackle from UConn we liked a couple of years ago coming out of the draft. Travis Jones has been a monster on the inside. He is questionable and only limited practiced 1 time this week. And then Roquan Smith has not practiced, but even maybe a lesser version of a Roquan Smith, maybe that helps your run game a little bit. But the Chargers, as much as, maybe the narrative has been, haven't been a great running team this year. So it's hard against this team to think, hey, this is the week that they break out. But let's get to one more here from Jackson, who says, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, and Will Dissly will all have a receiving touchdown Monday night. And unlike the one from Ethier, David, this one feels a lot more doable. Quentin Johnston scored in 3 straight games. Will Dissly got the first Chargers tight end touchdown of the season last week. And we know that Ladd McConkey can score from anywhere.
Absolutely. These 3 gentlemen right here that were listed make up 11 of Justin Herbert's 13 passing touchdowns. So this is definitely something that's very believable. Can you name the other 2 players that have scored touchdowns this year?
As far as receiving touchdowns, yes. I know Josh Palmer. Wait, did Josh Palmer get in? Yeah, he got
Josh
1, right?
Josh Palmer's 1.
Josh Palmer got 1, and then the other receiving touchdown, I do know who it is. It was Kimani Vidal.
There it is. Yeah, so
put me on the spot.
This one is the most believable of the bold predictions because these are the guys that have been getting it done for the Chargers offense all year long.
And I think even though Will Dissly has 1, like I think we've probably seen 3 tight end touchdowns dropped this year and 1 of them caught. So it does feel like he could have the opportunity, even though he only has 1 this year. But part of that bold prediction, is that Justin Herbert's going to throw for 3 touchdowns because he hasn't done it at all this season. But that is part of my bold prediction because I have Justin Herbert going nuts in this one in primetime Monday Night Football. I have Justin Herbert 400 total yards, rushing yards, and receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns in this game. Primetime Herbo with a great matchup gets his first 3 touchdown game and his first 400 yards of offense game this year.
I love that one. That's a fantastic one. I can see that happen. If that happens, the Chargers are going to win. And my bold prediction has somebody helping Justin Herbert out acquiring those yards. My bold prediction is Quentin Johnston, 6 catches, 115 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And I think one of those is going to go for 50 plus.
Ugh, that'd be huge. And I think if he gets loose in this secondary, obviously Kyle Hamilton is great. They have some great individual players. Marlon Humphrey is great, which is why I like that you went with, Quentin Johnston over maybe Alad McConkey, who has going to have the tougher matchup. But yeah, if they could do that and get those guys loose in the secondary, who knows what could happen. We've seen big plays against them all season long. But David, man, I have labored over this decision about who is going to win this game. The Chargers are obviously 2.5-point underdogs, so the national consensus is that they're going to lose. At the same time, the Chargers are hot. 4 games in a row. They're all losing teams as you look at them. At the same time, it also just feels like Jim Harbaugh is not going to let his older brother get him again, right? 0-2 against his older brother. You know that's eating at him. You know the Chargers are going to come out well prepared for this one. Are you taking them to win this game? Because I don't know if I can.
Listen up. Let's get the camera in here.
Oh, God, he's picking his microphone up. I'm scared.
If you want to shut up all the haters, you want to prove everybody that you're an actual legitimate threat in the AFC, it's about taking care of business and winning games and beating opponents like this, like the Baltimore Ravens. If you want to shut everybody up, if you want to be legitimate, if you want everyone to say the Chargers are here and they need to be reckoned with, it's about beating the Ravens. I have them doing that. 34-31.
Woo! Man, I mean, it would mean so much to what this team's trying to accomplish, to where it wants to eventually be. They're ahead of schedule right now. They shouldn't win this game in the first year of Jim Harbaugh with the team they're going up against and just kind of the situation that they were put in going into this year. But, man, I think you talked me into it. I'm going to say, Chargers 31, Ravens 30. Missed Justin Tucker, PAT, wins the game for the Chargers on Monday Night Football.
Let's go.
And then that's how it gets done. I didn't think I was picking the Chargers. I'm as a realist as it gets. I picked the Chargers to lose every game I've ever believed they're going to lose. Something about this game, man, something about that home crowd atmosphere the Chargers fans have brought to these games gives me a feeling that the Chargers can make a big statement in prime time tonight. And it's thanks to you guys, honestly, because our fans are the best fans out there. The everydayers have come in flocks to these games. And the Chargers might be able to put the rest of the league on notice tonight on Monday Night Football. Make sure you guys are back with us after for our hopefully live Chargers postgame show. We'll see how quickly we can get it out tonight. But to make sure you guys don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as find the show every day on our social media. You can find us on Twitter at Locked On LAC, on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. This is the game. Jim Harbaugh beating his brother will re-announce his entrance into the NFL, and the Chargers will be looking like a legitimate contender in the NFL. But make sure you guys are back for the live post game tonight. Until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.